talk about ourselves as being a content and an entertainment company more than just a basketball team.
Today I'm speaking with Dustin Godsey, the Chief Sales and Marketing Officer for the Milwaukee Bucks, the NBA basketball team. Where is your focus? Where is your attention when you're responsible for sales and marketing for the Bucks?
A big focus is how do we become really just more culturally relevant, right? You're always going to get engagement and views on big Giannis dunks and things like that going on. But for us, what we really try to do is tell deeper stories about what life is like for these guys. We focus a lot on sort of that raw, behind the scenes. At the end of the day, our players are our number one influencers. We see this as an opportunity to both serve that kind of diehard basketball fan and then also as an opportunity to...
We're chatting with Dustin Godsey, Chief Sales and Marketing Officer of the Milwaukee Bucks. And of course, I myself am an NBA fan, a basketball fan. I think you in many ways, Dustin, have the dream job of a lot of fans. Like you get to experience this every day and think about how you make more connections. Take us through what is your, where is your focus? Where is your attention? What does your week look like when you're responsible for sales and marketing for the Bucks?
Yeah, it's, it really is dependent on sort of the time of year and where we're going through. And, as we get into the season, the great thing about sort of being in professional sports and in the NBA and that sort of thing is we really do have this schedule of that's our North Star throughout the year. So we know, from October to April and hopefully into playoffs and further, our focus is really on how we're serving content, how we're producing content to speak to sort of our global audience, but also how we're, selling tickets and getting people into the building to watch those games. And then, the NBA has become such a year-round sort of content creator that, even when we get to the off season, again, it becomes focused on the sales side of really, how are we selling those season tickets? How are we getting out to people and taking advantage of that slower time in the off season? To how are we keeping up with the draft and providing behind the scenes content for people on draft workouts and people who are coming in and free agency. So it's really become sort of this year-round thing with just different pockets of where the activity kind of focuses and lies.
Well, and it's an interesting lens to look through. I mean, do you think, I think, even just the couple minutes we've been chatting, you've mentioned content and content creation a number of times. I mean, do you think, is that the lens that you look at this, that like at the core, I mean, you're many things. You're a sports team, you're a sports league, you're entertainment, but at the core, do you view yourselves, the Milwaukee Bucks are content creators? We really do. And we see, we talk about ourselves as being a content and an entertainment company more than just a basketball team or a sports team. That is obviously the big product and what is at the core of any of our content or anything that we're doing. But yes, that is 100% what we do. So whether it's the 2.5 hour broadcasts of 82 games every season, or the behind the scenes access that we're doing, or our podcast network that we launched, to us, it's really how do we find those different audiences, those different connections to fans. And we know that, 95% of our fans globally are never going to buy a ticket, or most of them even set foot in Milwaukee. And we know that, the way people kind of consume content right now and time shifting with the fact that the NBA is this global brand and has these global audiences, with time shifting, people aren't necessarily even around the world watching a full game. So we have to think about how they're consuming this, how to engage different types of fandom and be able to build those audiences. So what is something that, through this maybe lens of content creation, what is something that like might surprise other marketers about some of the things you do, or some of the programs or some of the campaigns that, you might not just assume that your basketball team does, as simple as the, 2.5 hour broadcast on game day?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's, one of the things we constantly are having to think about and how we even attack it and continue to change and do things. When you look at our social media audience and our audience that's engaging in our content, what we're doing, 75% of that is outside of the United States for our team. And that's, kind of on par with the NBA as a whole and other teams. So, I think for us, one of the big pieces, again, you're always going to get engagement and views on highlights and big Giannis dunks and things like that going on. But for us, what we really try to do is
tell deeper stories about kind of what life is like for these guys. You see the game and the glamour and what all that is, but really we focus a lot on sort of that raw behind the scenes, all access, the things that you're not going to see just watching a broadcast of a game, and be able to tell a little bit deeper stories of our players. We've just in the last 6 months launched. We're the first NBA team to launch kind of our own podcast network. So we went out and we created, again, to find different ways and audiences who want to consume things in different ways.
And what does that mean, podcast networks, as opposed to just a podcast or a couple of podcasts? How are you defining podcast network?
Yeah, so we're defining podcast network as we've created what we call Bucks Plus Audio, and it is a place where at this point we have 4 different podcasts that live with under that umbrella, and they range from being very basketball focused, and we have one that we call Bucks in 6 minutes, and every morning after a game we're cutting highlights of the radio broadcast and things going, just so that people who weren't able to watch the game have that tiny snippet to be able to catch up on what goes on. And then we do a couple of others. Behind the Bucks is one that we do that is more of a 4 times a year, we'll do a deeper dive into a story. We've done, a series about our Olympic athletes that we've had with the Milwaukee Bucks over history, and how international basketball plays into the Bucks. We have another one with our TV analyst called named Marcus Johnson, who called the Here District, where he interviews people that throughout the NBA, and really it's not even a Bucks centric podcast, even though it comes from the Bucks and utilizes our talent, but it's really talking about the NBA as a whole. He's a former player, so he has a lot of great deep connections with former players and that sort of thing. So again, looking to find those stories to tell, and if we can get an interview in there that, again, maybe somebody who isn't currently a Bucks fan wants to listen to and engages with, maybe that's a hook for them to be able to come in and become a fan of the Bucks, or pay a little bit more attention to what we do. So we see this as an opportunity to both serve that kind of diehard basketball fan or Bucks fan, and then also as an opportunity to reach out and create some brand awareness and create some engagement for people who maybe don't care what Giannis did last night, but love the Bucks and love Marcus's personality and what he's doing.
What do you take from, I just want to sort of take, you talked about kind of reaching out to people that are maybe not the hardcore fans, but what do you take from, I think a lot of talk this past year of like Taylor Swift effect in the NFL, and sort of a crossover person influencer who just brings in new people. Do you actively think about that for the NBA? Maybe there's not, we need, I guess Giannis needs to start dating Taylor Swift. But if Travis Kelce doesn't break up with her or she doesn't break up with him, and we're going back to this, how do you think about making bridges and bringing more people in? Or is it more serving your fans, and fans is short for fanatics, and you need to give content to the fanatics? How do you think about it, or the loosely people who follow?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's again, a lot of what we do is we think about things in different pieces of the audience. So we know we have to have that content that is for the diehard basketball fans, and they want to see what practice looks like, and they want to know, they want to see every dunk in 8 different views, and that sort of thing, to be able to see all that. But then, we really want to be a part, and really in the last 10 years, as Giannis has come on, we started winning and going through, and I've been with the team. A big focus is how do we become really just more culturally relevant, right? Like, sports is an interesting kind of industry to be in, because it's going to be cyclical, right? Teams are not going to be good or winning, and in this, as they talk about your window of your championship window.
So you think you have a window here because you have a superstar player in Giannis. You've had a lot more success when he's been here. Then you have this window that you need to take advantage of.
Yeah, you have a window that you want to take advantage of, and I think through that, you obviously want to maximize what you're doing from a ticket sales standpoint, and engagement, and audience building. But you're also using that to try to become, much more a part of pop culture and culture as a whole, so that, maybe in 10 years, Giannis retires, and we go through a couple years of poor performance. We've built that fan base and that audience of people who are completely dependent on just wins and losses, and if you're going to be in the finals, but you also have people who just want to engage with your brand and care about the brand and are along for that ride.
And so if you're content creators, then are your athletes, are Milwaukee Bucks players, your influencers, and how do you think about, they have their own brands, they do their own things off the court, that can be a lot of positive things, that can at times be some not so positive things too. How do you think about that and sort of leveraging, I mean, do you get more benefit for the Milwaukee Bucks when when Giannis and others are doing well with their personal brands too, and how do you think about leveraging that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit it exactly right. And how we think about it is, we work with influencers. We certainly, there's crossover in music and lifestyle and that sort of thing that we've done a lot with. But at the end of the day, our players are our number one influencers, and especially when you have, somebody like Giannis, you have somebody like Damian Lillard that we traded for last year that comes in that is,
I'm from
not
Oregon,
only
so
one of
I know about
exactly.
Dame. Yeah, he's a great player.
So,
Absolutely.
a top 75 player of all time who also is, a musician and has his hands in a bunch of other things. So we certainly see it as, beneficial for both sides to be able to work together and build each other's audiences. I think you nailed it in that, you know, really even over the last 5 or 6 years, you've really seen players becoming much more aware of the fact that they do have this audience and they do have their personal brand. And I think where we try to work very closely with our guys and we have people who are embedded with the team at all times, content creators, every road trip, every practice, that are there constantly. So they get to know each other and we kind of have that symbiotic relationship where we can help them with things. We can provide them with access to things that they might not otherwise have. And conversely, they're out, they recognize and understand that even if what they're doing isn't directly a Bucks event or for the Bucks, that does have, impact on what we're trying to do and how we try to grow our business. And we're very, open with our players, our executives talk to the players every year just about understanding the business of the NBA and how revenue sharing goes into their pocket, and how if they're helping us with selling tickets, that ultimately benefits them in financial ways. So we try to have a very open, close relationship with our basketball operations team to make sure that communication is always going on, and everybody understands how to work together in these situations.
So, and you mentioned the kind of dual audiences, which is your local audience, or your audience within sort of like maybe range of coming to a game. But then you said 75% is global audience. So how um, do you think about that in terms of parallel streams of content that go to each one? Where do you prioritize now? It sounds like there is more of a focus of building like a culturally relevant brand that maybe can withstand wins or losses in any given season moving forward. How do you sort of think about those two audiences, and how do you parallel track them?
Yeah, it really is sort of that parallel track of where we kind of have to think of it as a little bit two distinct areas of our business and what we do. And the big piece for us is, we do have to, half of our revenue is local revenue, and the other half comes from sort of the NBA and the national and international TV deals. But that local revenue is really dependent on us super serving that local market. We have 6 million people in Wisconsin. We think about our total addressable market. That's probably what it is for the most part for ticket sales and that sort of local revenue. They're the ones who are able to watch our local broadcasts and see those sponsorships and that partnership. So when you really think about what we're doing from a data side of things, from a direct marketing, that is the audience that we really focus on, from that sort of personal relationship and how we're going direct to consumer to push those buying habits, and how our in arena experience is trying to funnel as much of that consumer data into our learning, so that we know who to go after for certain ticket products, and who is a good candidate for a full season ticket versus maybe just a promotional offer as we get into the season.
That's where your sort of data and analytics is focused on, is trying to kind of like identify cohorts or personas that would be someone who would buy a season ticket or spend more, or buy, I don't know, a box or something like that versus someone who's more casual and understanding what product needs to be put in front of them?
Yeah, 100%. And even, down to, starting to influence people as they get into the arena, and how do we, start to push people towards, while we have this 2.5 hour audience that are within our four walls, how are we, driving them to the retail shop? How are we driving them to certain higher margin food and beverage items? That sort of thing all goes into what we think about as we're super serving, that local market audience. And then on the other side is really that content and that push, right? It's how are we finding global partners, where we can, utilize that, and they can look to expand our reach into different markets. How are we finding ways, to engage those fans in ways that aren't necessarily direct revenue generating for us, but we know that the long tail effect of building this global audience and building that culture and that fandom is going to have longer term effect on what we do from a partnership and a sponsor side.
What do most marketers in sort of like sports entertainment miss? Do you think that they would be wise to pay attention to? What's less than obvious if you're sort of in the kind of sports entertainment industry?
Yeah, I think it really has become, again, it's those two things, but it is, both within the industry. I think we're starting to catch up, to the rest of the world in some ways. But it is, there are so many touch points to fans, and for us, and it's why you're starting to see, teams like us, teams, in really all the leagues starting to build these entertainment districts around the arena, and really almost become real estate companies on top of entertainment and content companies, where you can start to build these holistic fan experiences, all of the different data touch points, and understanding what that customer journey is. You can start to control all of those different pieces of it, and really start to dig deep into, what that data means, and how you can start to influence those consumer actions.
For the Milwaukee Bucks, what is your most important marketing channel, and how do you win it?
Yeah, I think again it depends on some of those, which audience we're talking to. But if we're talking, really about Milwaukee and selling tickets, and what that direct revenue is, for us, it is that the data and what we have is the magic piece to that. And
Okay,
we're
so direct
undergoing
to consumers
direct to
targeting.
consumer is targeting. It's, we certainly, there's paid digital, there's paid social there. We worry about search engine marketing, and making sure that, our we're getting up out there in front of, the ticket brokers, and those sorts of things that are also out doing it. But for us, it is, we have that first party data. We're constantly collecting it. We know what the consumer is looking at, kind of on that personal level. And we're really taking now this time, in the next 6 months, to really build out what the roadmap for us looks like in the future, because technology around that has changed so much even over the last 5 or 6 years. And as everybody sort of talks about AI, and there's a new AI solution for everything, we don't think about AI from you know, the generative content, or that sort of thing. Where we see it being valuable to us moving forward is how we really become more efficient in our sales, how we start to understand exactly the right time and the right product to be able to go out to people. Is this a person who wants a phone call? Is this a person who we should be using SMS to reach out to? Is this a person that, is going to respond better to an email? And what's that call to action? So for us, I think that is really what our future looks like. What our next 6 months to a year is building out that roadmap.
And final question on the industry, which is just how do you view collaborations, partnerships in your marketing mix, and how do you approach it differently than others? Are you trying to, bring people in to engage in your ecosystem and bring their audiences, or are you trying to get Milwaukee Bucks to maybe other places or surprising places or unexpected places where they can tap into other audiences? How do you view collabs and partnerships?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. We actually, 2 years ago, started Bucks and Six, our own private label retail line. So I think this is a good example of that exact thing, where, you know, team merchandise and that sort of, it's kind of run by a few licensees. The NBA really controls the ecosystem for the most part. But what we were able to do is create this private label that we have control over. And it's really been
collaboration focused. And so as we went into this, it was, where can we find some deeper relationships, both locally within Milwaukee, where we can tell stories that through our retail that is authentic to our local fans and our local audience and means something. We also see ourselves as being sort of a megaphone for Milwaukee to be able to educate people around the world about Milwaukee that may not have another touch point to what the city is. But then also partnering with kind of larger national brands who might not be an NBA licensee. And to be able to do this in a way where, rather than us going to them saying, this is what we want this to look like, we partner with artists and brands that we're partnering with them for a reason, and it's because they have a particular audience and they have a particular style. So we really take more of an approach of, look, here's our assets, here's our IP, here's kind of guidelines on things, but we want you to take it and put it in your voice to reach your audience, as opposed to just creating another Bucks t-shirt that kind of looks like every other Bucks t-shirt but has your brand on it. So we really see it as an opportunity to get our brand in front of people in a different way that speaks to them in sort of that authentic voice, as opposed to just, throwing our logo on things and pushing it out.
As a marketer, what is the best advice you've ever received?
One of the big things that has always stuck with me, and I think it really is advice for life and as a marketer as a whole, is, I had my former boss who had a magnet in his office, and it was a stop sign, and it actually said wait on it. It's, why am I talking, right? And so I think there's some time where, as marketers, it's really important for us, to marketers, managers, whoever, to take a minute and actually listen and take those signals in and really understand it. It becomes tempting, especially when you're this, like us, a content brand. You're constantly pushing, you want people to see what you're doing, to actually take that time to stop and listen and try to understand what the signals are coming in, so you're not missing things.
What is the worst advice you've ever received?
When I first moved to Milwaukee, our brand was not in a great place at the time. And in fact, I was the first marketing person the team had ever had in place. They had no marketing function at all. And when I got to Milwaukee and started talking to people, telling what I moved here to do, I had a lot of people who told me not to unpack my boxes because they didn't figure that the team was going to be around much longer. So
Okay.
that turned out to be pretty bad advice, and glad I didn't take it, because we've enjoyed quite a run over the last 10 years.
What has been the most challenging day in your professional life?
I think, there's a lot of challenges in this super, fast moving industry where, we don't have control over really the product or what happens, right? It's live sports, and there's going to be wins and losses, and you can't really control for that. Certainly, watching as COVID happened, and seeing the announcement, the NBA was sort of at the center of everything shutting down. That was certainly a challenge. But I think, on a more positive thing, I think that one of the most fun experiences I've had, but also one of the most challenging, is when we won a championship in 2021. You're celebrating, you're excited, everybody's out and enjoying the moment, and then you wake up the next morning and realize you have now a parade you have to plan. You have
Okay.
this massive party that the city's expecting, and when you've never been there or done it before, you're kind of making it up as you go, and it's really like a 48-hour sprint from the moment you wake up the morning after you win to when those buses pull out of the arena. And it was, again, something I hope to be able to do, because now I feel like I know how to do it again.
But you forget when everyone's celebrating in the city that someone has to put this together. And
Somebody
oh my
has to
gosh,
plan
this
it. Yeah.
person is Dustin. This person is me.
How are we getting water to people? What's the route? All these things that, you don't want to talk about before it happens because everybody's superstitious, but suddenly it's like, yeah, I've got to figure out how to make this happen.
Final question for you is just, and if listeners can't see this, but I can see this, or if you're watching on YouTube, you should watch on YouTube. You can see this. You have a big shovel behind you on the wall. What is the shovel? What does that represent?
Yeah, the shovel that was from our groundbreaking when we broke ground on Fiserv Forum back in 2016. Again, as I mentioned,
at one point there was not a lot of faith in the city that we were going to be able to get a new arena to be able to rally the city around this brand. And so that was a very, very special moment. I've actually had the opportunity in my career to open a couple different arenas, to close an arena, but this one was really special to sort of see that vision of what we had for Milwaukee and creating this entertainment district really come to life. So that's one of the big special moments of the career that I've been able to celebrate.
Dustin Godsey, Chief Sales and Marketing Officer of the Milwaukee Bucks, and taking the Milwaukee Bucks from a team that people had doubts about that might not stick around to a successful global brand and franchise. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ben. Really appreciate it.